Hey, this is Matt once again. We're back to the videos. The paid request is time for Andrew. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested requests in any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is for the film Midnight Express from 1978, which was based on a book about a real experience someone had in Turkey. And it was written by Oliver Stone and directed by Alan Parker. Alan Parker would go on to, I think he did Pink Floyd's The Wall and Angel Heart. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe he did those two. And of course, Oliver Stone, who wrote this, would go on to direct Natural Born Killers, JFK, plenty of other movies. Platoon. There stars a guy named Brad Davis, which I think he was in Chariots of Fire, but I actually cannot remember what else he did after this. I know he passed away sadly in the 90s, kind of an early age. It might have been because of AIDS, I believe, sadly. You also have Randy Quaid, who of course later would be in Independence Day, among many others. John Hurt, who is an alien. Actually, the year after this, he'd be an alien, as the guy who gets the chest burster out of him. You also have Irene Miracle, who I remember because she was Marge Singer's wife in Watchers 2, which is a personal favorite of mine. You also have Paul Smith as, just say your villain. Paul Smith, I remember being Bluto in the Robin Williams film Popeye. He was also the guy helping little kid played by Ernie Reyes Jr. in Red Sonja. And they were the allies to Red Sonja, as well as Arnold Schwarzenegger's character by the end of the film. He was the guy with the bone. Bull Hopkins, which he's been in a few films throughout the years. He was in Friend Dust Till Dawn 2. He was in this film called Mutant with Wiens Hauser. He's done a lot of other stuff. He's in for a little bit. And I know this got a lot of award recognition and positive reviews. I gotta be honest, I've never been much a fan of this movie. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think the acting is bad. I know some people say Brad Davis' acting is hammy. I don't know, I didn't really feel that way with his performance. I think they really nailed down an oppressive setting where you see the grunge and dirt and grime of this prison, and you get the feeling as to why you would feel so depressed in nature of being there. And I did not realize, because I had seen this film over 20 years ago, to the point I did not remember much about it. I forgot that the scene in The Cable Guy, where Jim Carrey puts his nipple to the in jail, oh Billy, to Matthew Broderick. I forgot that was a reference to this movie. So when it happens, I went, oh shit, that's where the fucking Cable Guy scene comes from. I forgot. But it's one of those things that as I watch it, I'm going, number one, there's qualms I have with the lead character. Not that he deserves everything he gets, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, you're in another country in Turkey, and you're smuggling 4 pounds of drugs, in this case, hash. It's kind of hard to feel. It's not that it's hard to feel bad for him, but it's kind of like, dude, you maybe you don't deserve the whole thing, but you were not 100% innocent either, dude. Maybe just because I thought, oh, you idiot, you fucking moron, you fucking dumbass, what were you thinking? Like, you're putting this shit taped around your body, and it's 4 pounds of the shit, and you're going on a plane, so that would be like you're smuggling. At least that's how people would take it. Just go home and, buy some fucking weed or something with the amount of money. I just... So you're kind of that feeling like, oh my god, dude, what are you doing? You fucking idiot. You fucking... Like, that's the feeling I did at first. Not, oh my god, how poor guy. And Irene Miracle plays his girlfriend. Bull Hopkins is his American that maybe worse for the consulate, but he kind of gets the the Brad Davis to tell him where he got the hash from so they can make their arrest. And he thinks he's going to get a deal, but he doesn't. He's going to get jail time, which at first he thinks is going to be like a year and a half or so. But then later in the film, it gets overturned. He's going to be there for like another 30 years. And that's where he really loses it. And like I said, it has some good supporting cast members. Randy Quaid, he's in there because he stole 2 candles from a mosque. And then John Hurt, who's an older character, and he's, I think, addicted to heroin. I think that was a drug. But it's one of those things, like, as I'm watching it, in a weird way, I hate to say this, it felt like he didn't go through a lot during prison to really make it feel as intense as other movies I've seen with this type of predicament. Like, granted, they were done after Midnight Express, but it's like, okay, the environment sucks. And like any other prison, there's violence in it. But really, all that happens to him for a good chunk of it is he's bored, and he's lonely, and he's dirty. Let me put it this way. You look at the stuff that Tim Robbins went through in The Shawshank Redemption, where he was innocent, and he's in this big old prison where he's being assaulted, or at least assaulted, perhaps anally assaulted, all that stuff, but he still overcomes it. There's the stuff that being fucked over by the warden, who has a personal grudge, like, no, you're doing this stuff for me, and this guy to get you out, but I know you're innocent, but I'm going to screw you over. It just felt like I felt more for that character. I felt more sorry for that character. I felt like he went through more. Or hell, Lockup with Sylvester Stallone, which is a film that got shit on all the time. I liked Lockup a lot more than Midnight Express. I do. Not just because it stars Stallone, because there's been Stallone films I've been negative on. Mainly his newer work. But I looked at the way Sylvester Stallone plays that character. And I looked at the way his ordeals. And I did more of his character where I feel sorry for. That he made a dumb mistake. He was serving his time. He wanted to go see this guy who was his father figure who's dying. You wouldn't let me. He got minimum security. He gets thrust back to maximum security just because Donald Sutherland, who is a great bad guy that you love to hate, just has a big old grudge against him. And you see all this stuff Stallone's character goes through. Whether it be stuff like when he's in the chamber and he has to be forced to get up and say his name and number, and blinding lights and lack of sleep, and being in isolation and going toe to toe with Sonny Landham and people getting killed, and his girlfriend being threatened. I'm going to get out, I'm going to do this to her. Like, you just felt more of an ordeal that Stallone was going for. You felt more physical and emotional baggage put upon. Like, the most idea of this is because of the environment. Which, from what I understand, a lot of people in Turkey did not like this movie because it made everybody in Turkey seem like a scumbag. In fact, I believe even the person who wrote the book had his own complaints about the film. And apparently, I think Brad Davis, the star, and Oliver Stone apologized for the film. I could be wrong on that. Like, they apologized for how it represented Turkey. And I'm sure it wouldn't be a great place to be, but this is the film that really got into the whole steam of pop culture for a while, of you never go to jail in Turkey, and it's the worst place on earth. Because you look at throughout the film, spoilers, it's him being lonely, Have talked about how people will stab you in the ass, as if you get stabbed higher, it'd be known as, you know, intention to kill. There's this guy that is an informant that tells on them. So Randy Quaid at times gets into trouble, including a hernia. And the Billy character, he's not tortured. I'm not saying I need to see that, but he's like, he doesn't get tortured. He doesn't get manhandled. He doesn't get forced. There's a interlude where there's a mutual bond with another prisoner, and you get the idea that they had sexual intercourse with each other. Pretty much all he did is that they're cleaning each other up and they hold hands. You get the idea when the guy gets out of jail, he taps Brad Davis, and there's a mutual connection. But it's mainly only by loneliness and how dirty it is. That seems like all there is to it, and maybe because I've seen other films afterward that, like In Hell, you look at the stuff that Van Damme goes through in Hell, and people mock me because how could you put In Hell and Lock Up above this Oscar-winning movie? Because I just said it, and if you disagree, oh well. Teach their own, the world is still turning. I'm just saying how I feel watching the film. The acting I have no problems with. The environment, which I don't think they shot in Turkey. I forget where they shot it. But they do have a grasp of how grimy and you know, how it seems like a shitty place to be in terms of the environment. I'll give you that, but it just seems like not a lot happens. There's one bit where John Hurt's cat is found hung. There's a bit where the kids did something to these other kids and they're punished by getting their feet smacked by Paul Smith, the guard. There's a bit where the three of them try to escape, but they get lost in the tunnels and they keep finding dead ends, so they come back again. And the informant, Randy Quaid, gets taken away. And you don't see him anymore. You just hear that, oh, he had a displaced hernia and he's in the hospital. But we never see him again, so we don't know what happened to that character. And then the informant turns on John Hurt, and John Hurt gets taken away, and Brad Davis gets pissed and kills the informant. He even bites his tongue out. And he gets put in an insane ward. And he's kind of drifting about, and that's where you come across. And people say, well, it's more realistic this way. Well, again, even the person who wrote the book said it wasn't. So you can't throw realism in there when the guy who wrote the book even said, no, a lot of this didn't happen. A lot of this is not exactly what happened. Not everybody in Turkey was a piece of shit, and all this other shit. So even the person who wrote the book, who went through this experience, didn't seem to care about the movie. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it seemed like when you look at interviews from the guy. And that's when you get the girlfriend saying, oh, Billy, you need to get out of here, you'll die. So he's given this theme by his girlfriend, has some money in it. He tells John Hurt, who's out of his mind on drugs, don't die. But then we never see John Hurt again, so we never know what happened to the guy. I guess you just assume he died, even though he says, I'll come back for you. But even the text at the end, it never says that he went back for him. It's like, so you lied to the guy. I'm just going to say this, tough titty. And then tries to bribe Paul Smith, who's then ready to assault him. But then there's a struggle. Paul Smith dies. He steals the guy's uniform that, considering they're both pretty different sized guys, it fit him. The uniform fit him fairly well. And then he's able to get through, and the guards pay him not too much mind, and he runs out. And the next scene is still pictures of him back in America in the airport with his family. I think that's another thing too, is that Brad Davis, I don't think he did a bad job. It's just his character really isn't that interesting. and you're just so mad at him for smuggling the drugs in the first place and getting himself in a situation in the first place. It's like, just don't fucking do that, you idiot. And direction-wise, I didn't mind the opening bit. I like the usage of the heartbeat motif to build the tension. But then throughout the rest of the film, I didn't really feel as that much of tension because, again, really nothing was happening to the main character. Other than bored and lonely, and that's it. Again, when I look at other films like The Shawshank Redemption, and yes, even Lock Up and In Hell and other stuff, it just feels like, what you want to call it, Hollywood storytelling, or Hollywood storytelling to make things exciting for a movie. It's still within the story it's telling. Yeah, it does come off as more thrilling, or more intense, or more exciting, or more be feeling sorry for the main character because of his struggles and his ordeals and what he's going through and going. I'm not saying I felt none of that. That'd be untrue, but not as much as those other films I mentioned. So, do I think this is an awful film? No. It just, like, Sly went through more in Lockup compared to Billy in this fictionalized movie. Because again, when you base it on the book, even the guy who wrote the book said this is a lot of fiction that's in the movie anyway. So if you don't put a lot of fiction, then embellish on stuff that really made me feel more of a danger for the main character. I never felt the main character was as much in danger compared to those other movies I mentioned. That's just me, though. That's, Paul Smith comes in every once in a while. But he just wasn't really hung up on this compared to a lot of people and how they feel about it. But that's just me. I prefer Midnight Run. For going midnight. Or To the Midnight Hour. So with that said, thanks for watching. Sure, this is a controversial opinion. I don't give a fuck. This is my opinion. You don't have to share it. And we'll see you later. Bye-bye.